You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is October 16th, 2024, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. Today, we have a special show. We have a person who's actually running for Congress with us today. It is Chris Bish, and she is running for the 6th District here in California. So this will be a great conversation with the election just a few weeks away. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to the panel. In our lower left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our special guest, Chris Bish. And so we can't wait to talk to her. And my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. But before we get into anything else, we're going to talk to her about her background, the issues, and all that. But we always start with a Liberty quote of the day, and I kind of like this quote because it actually, I think this might capture maybe some of what Chris is doing a little bit. So this is a quote from Dwight D. Eisenhower. He is our 34th president of the United States and the Supreme Allied Commander during World War II. And he said, "For politics ought to be the part-time profession of every citizen who would protect the rights and privileges of free people and who would preserve what is good and fruitful in our national heritage." And what really struck me was part-time, because a lot of these people, this is something where they bounce around Congress forever. It's like their full-time job is fleecing the public as a politician. And in fact, there is another guy here who's kind of fits that bill, and that's our current president, Joe Biden. And he was actually been in the Senate for 36 years. He served as vice president for 8 years, and he managed to get into some other trouble in the 4 years before he became president. But anyway, he spent most of his life in figuring out how to manage our lives, I guess. And that's probably a big part of the reason why we're in a lot of the trouble we're in today. Yeah. But getting back to the quote, what do you guys think of that quote? I think it's kind of an interesting quote.
It is absolutely beautiful. It is what the founders intended, was a part-time legislature, not the geriatric ward that has become Washington, D.C. It's like you send them there to die, but it's more like the living dead. They just wander the halls, bumping into things, crashing everything, including our economy. It's terrifying. Great.
Well, Chris, if they actually died, it might not be so bad if we said
exactly. We've got some Weekend at Bernie situations going on. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Okay, they had her propped up somewhere.
Yes. Dianne Feinstein will also qualify. Joe Biden. I mean, people who have been propped up horribly. I mean, come on.
Weekend at Biden's. That's why we see him just laying on the beach.
Yeah. Sleeping. The world is burning and he's sleeping on the beach. It's a real problem.
Yeah, even though his party has decided, this office isn't for him still, he's still there somehow.
Yeah.
Hanging out.
He wasn't qualified to run for office again, so they give us what's her face, and then they leave him snoring on the beach.
Yeah.
Riddle me this. How does that lily white old man lay on the beach every single day and not get a tan?
Must have some kind of a slick oil that he puts on.
Yeah, Banana Boat Jack number 200.
Yeah.
It sucks the color out of your skin.
But but this quote that you chose, Jason, it really speaks to one of the threats that we have here in America. That is the power of incumbency. I mean, if you look every election cycle, whether the Democrats have a big wave, a blue wave, or the Republicans have a big wave, at the end of the day, 90%, 93% of incumbents get reelected. And they just keep on going. They learn to enrich themselves. They learn to manage our lives. This power of incumbency is a real problem. And you know, when I first really became an adult, I never supported term limits. And but over the years I've just changed my mind. I think these people should be termed out. You know, after they maybe they serve 2 terms in the Senate and maybe 6 terms, give them 6 terms, that's 12 years each, 6 terms in the House. I think these people should be termed out. And not and the other thing too that should be termed out is legislation. We should have term limits for legislation and term limits for these incumbents who sit around and do nothing but find ways to manage and destroy our lives. Period.
You know, at first I would have agreed with you 100%. And then I started looking at California and the term limits that we have. And what I have discovered, it does not matter who we elect to the state assembly or the state senate, because the unelected bureaucrats are running the state. And that's why California is falling faster than the country, because it's the same unelected bureaucrats. Now, I am a realtor. I have a real estate license, been doing this for more than 20 years. And every so many years, I have to take an ethics exam in order to maintain my license. So I would say, why don't we license politicians where you have to take an ethics exam? And at that point, when these, well, and we can also hold them accountable by it. You know, you have to pass the test. And then there's no excuse when you lie, because I go to jail if I lie as a realtor, lose all kinds of money. They're completely immune. We start making them accountable, you know, not just puffery, but I mean, when they do serious stuff wrong, and we'll get into the border and some other things that they are doing that are really malfeasance.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's fun too, because if you are a state official in California, or even a bureaucrat who does work that may have to do with policy and other things, you actually have to take an ethics course like every 2 years, I think it is,
Yes.
and you have to sign that disclose what your assets are and say, hey, if I have these conflicts of interest, all these penalties can happen to me. And yet somehow we see at the national level, these characters can do all kinds of insider trading and who knows what else, and they all leave richer than when they came in, except for maybe Trump. I don't know.
Yes. Biden is a very good example of that.
With the negative.
Yeah.
But Christine, to further your point, even though these term limits is problematic if we do not deal with the issue of these unelected bureaucrats, I would have no problem. I mean, I was a bureaucrat too. I worked for the state for a very long time. But I would have no problem if we put term limits on these unelected bureaucrats too.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Seriously.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I tell you what. Let's jump right into the discussion about Christine's campaign, and there is something related to this that I wanted to jump onto right as we get into that. So, just so people know what this is all about. So, this is James. Can you bring it up? This is Christine Bish's web page. It's bishforcongress.com, and so you can go find out more about her there. And she is running for the 6th congressional district, as we talked about. And so in case you're not familiar with where that is in the Sacramento region. It covers Rancho Cordova and Citrus Heights, and looks like maybe some of Natomas over there too.
All of Natomas.
So, all of Natomas. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it's covering that area, and it's currently held by a guy named Ami Berra. And one of the reasons when you guys were talking about this, it struck me, I actually have a little video of this when you guys were talking about, how hard it is to get people out. So this is a little earlier than I wanted to play it, but so if Christine is sort of the hero of the conversation that we're talking about right now, here's Ami Berra, who's the incumbent, and let's hear him talk about how being in Congress for a while maybe helps you out. So James, our invisible hand, can you play KOL number 5?
I've run some of the hardest races in 2012, turning a Republican district blue, beating Dan Lundgren. I had really hard elections in 2014 and 2016 and held on to that seat. I've made my districts safe. And now with redistricting, it's a really safe district.
So there you go.
Okay.
Some redistricting, and it's almost like, hey, I don't even have to worry about
Really?
election.
Well, Mr. Barra, you're not looking at the same Secretary of State numbers that I'm looking at, because I started this race with a D+7 where you had a 7-point advantage. But the Democrat voter registration in this geographic area that is now District 6 is below 43%. It's actually 42.5. And that was as of our September 6th numbers, I believe it is. And where Republicans were at 29%, independents, they're running about 5%. And it's the no party preference that's going to decide it. But we're looking at voter registration for Democrats dropping. Why? Because they can't wait to get the hell out of California either. They created this mess, and now they're leaving it for us to clean up. So I'm glad you're excited. And, I think our debate that will be airing today will paint a different picture. Because in that debate, Mr. Barra was telling me he agreed with me and that he wanted to work with me. I was a little shocked when he said he wanted to work with me on some issues because, dude, if I'm doing it, that meant you lost.
It's true.
He wasn't getting the whole picture.
Well, Christine, it sounds like certainly Ami is the Democrat and you are running as a Republican. And so I guess, why are you running? What is it that is motivating you? I mean, obviously you said, the way the Democrats seem to be managing California is to drive everybody out. What is it, I guess, that you want to change?
When I started this, I ran my first time in 2020 and actually 2019, and it was our water. Did you know in my little community of Antelope, we had 10 wells that serviced the community. 7 of those wells were closed by my water district because the contamination levels of chromium-6 and other forever chemicals was too high. But I was assured that the 3 remaining wells had acceptable levels of contamination. I don't know, 2-3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And so I reached out at the time. My representative was Doris Matsui, and tried to call, tried to write, email, even social media. And I didn't even get the courtesy of a form letter saying, thanks for contacting us. Here's a Ouija board. Keep in touch, nothing. So after, I went in and I had my surgery, they removed about 1/3 of my right kidney. And I was recovering, laying in bed and taking some really good drugs, removed part of the kidney, and watching TV. And Doris came on, and she was just carrying on about how much she hated the president. I'm like, all right, whatever. And that she was going to make sure that no other legislation got through. Now I'm laying there and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm a small business owner. I don't like everybody I work with, maybe the other agent, maybe even one of my clients, but that doesn't mean I can refuse to do my job. I have a job to do. And most people, you don't get to refuse to do your job and still keep it. So I had decided that she didn't want that job. I wanted that job. And I ran against her, had no clue what I was doing, no money, no experience, no background. So it was on the job training. I performed much better than I could have possibly imagined. And then, of course, redistricting changed. And they put Doris in the lower part of Sacramento County and kept her happy and safe, and threw Ami Berra to the wolves. And so I'm not moving. I'm not shopping for a candidate to run against or shopping for a district. I believe you must represent the people where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, in my district, in the 6th district, especially as a realtor, I know where we work, where we play, where we live, where we go to school. Where's the shopping? What are the parks like? I know this area. And as a realtor, I know it better than a lot of people.
I imagine you also know how these things are changing over time too. As a
Yes.
realtor, you probably see a lot of that with policy and everything.
Yeah, well, and it's my job.
Hmm.
That's
Yes.
my job.
So
So yeah,
Christine, so if you are elected, if I mean you're running a campaign, if you are elected, what do you think you're gonna bring different to the district?
accountability. It's right now, Ami Berra is unaware of how we live, the consequences of his actions. Before I was a realtor, I was in a law firm for 10 years. And I understood, just as I do now, everything I do has consequences. So before I sign a contract, write an offer, do anything like that, I consider what are the ramifications of what I'm doing. So it's about being accountable to the people that I intend to serve. And I guess that's the biggest difference. I'm not going there to lead people. I'm going there to serve my community. And it's that servant's heart is what the founding fathers intended. So if we go back to Eisenhower, when you opened up about that part-time legislature, it was to do your duty and go home,
Yeah.
not go there to rot.
So would
Yeah.
you do that? Would you if elected, would you 2, 4, 6 years, whatever, and then go home? Would you do that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not going there to die. My husband and I were talking about our retirement. I have grandkids. It's crazy. I'm now 58 years old and I'm applying for a new job. It's about going there, making the difference that I can, and coming home, and it's affecting the things, doing the things that affect our lives. And one of those things is going to be closing the border. I am passionate about that. We need to have legal immigration. I recently had an immigration lawyer in my office where he came in to talk to me about just this. What are you going to do? We've got people in other countries who have spent money, hired lawyers, they've got sponsors, they have the income to support themselves, not be dependent on the American people. They want to add to our culture, add to our melting pot, and bring something that education and history and culture that makes us all better, not gangbangers taking over apartment buildings, sucking up resources, beating up old ladies on trains, Lake and Riley, where women are being raped and murdered. This is not what immigration is. That's an invasion.
Well, Christine, let me take a moment to show a little video clip because we had, I was going to show this later and I thought we'd get into this topic, but since we're in it now, we have, James, we have KOL number 7, the video clip, and that kind of gives us a sense of the scope of what this immigration problem is. This is a news clip, I think, from right around the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. So, James, can you play KOL number 7?
Back here at home to the crisis at the southern border. Record numbers of migrants crossing over this week. And our team was there today as busloads of migrants were released onto the streets in Arizona. Our Julia Ainsley is there.
Tonight, Customs and Border Protection overwhelmed by an unprecedented number of migrants crossing the southern border. Nearly 50,000 undocumented migrants crossed in just 4 days this week, shattering records never seen before. The record levels pushing border stations past capacity. In Eagle Pass, Texas, migrants crossing dangerous waters and waiting by the hundreds to be taken in by Border Patrol. In Arizona, agents dropping off migrants in downtown Nogales to free up space.
And so you can see, I mean, there's huge numbers of migrants, and the government is just simply releasing them into the interior without really any vetting other than to say, I'm here because I'm persecuted and I'm applying for asylum. That's it. So yeah, well, anyways, yeah. So go ahead, Christine. I know you were already jumping in on this issue, but I just wanted the people to see that, hey, look, this is a big issue. We're not just simply imagining this.
Well, these aren't migrants. These are illegal aliens violating our laws.
And I hate, and Christine, I just want, if you know, I hate to hear the words undocumented migrant. I just hate it. They are illegal aliens or illegal whatever, but they're not undocumented migrants.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well,
I'm
that's
sorry.
like calling the drug dealer an undocumented pharmacist.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Oh, Christine, I'm going to steal that, okay? I'm going to steal that.
Okay.
Why does the government arrest the undocumented pharmacists? I wonder. They don't arrest the other
We
undocumented.
don't know who all their clients are. You
Yeah,
never know.
yeah, they might be Hunter Biden's pharmacist.
We don't know if it's Hunter
Yeah.
Biden. Remember, they never found out who lost their Coke at the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. This is a caricature, just a parody of what our country is.
Yeah.
And I'm very conscious of the word that I said is. It's not was. We are not past tense. We're just in a downturn. And like a phoenix, I believe in this country. We will rise.
Well, I did want to show a little bit of numbers too, so people can get a sense of the scale and when these things changed. So, James, can you bring up the visual? So this is a website called usafacts.org, and they seem to have a lot of good information about a lot of different topics. This particular page is on immigration. And what I thought was interesting about this is they have time scales where they can show, the amounts of people crossing the borders. This particular thing is a stat right here is from 2020 to 2023. And you can see these border encounters. And so as the Trump administration ended, you can see these numbers are very low. And then you can see as the Biden administration took over, these things just exploded. And of course, now you can hear Kamala talking about the big reductions they've had with their recent policies, I guess. And so,
No, they're already here.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, but these numbers are still, even if they're reductions from this massive peak that looks like it's about 6 or 7 times whatever was happening during Trump's administration, they're still 3 or 4 times what was happening during Trump's administration, and they're celebrating that as as some kind of a victory. So it's pretty amazing, and there's a few other numbers here too. This is from 1980 to 2022, and this talks about apprehensions at the border over that time period. And you can see that, during these period of, sort of Obama Trump, the numbers were pretty low until Biden takes over, and then they just skyrocket up again. So, I mean, these you'll have the media gaslighting constantly to say this isn't a problem, nothing to see here, nothing happening. But, these are the numbers, and all you have to do is just go look them up. So I just wanted to throw those out there to kind of, put some concrete on what you're talking about there, Chris.
Oh, you know what? The media elites and these politicians, they're not in the grocery stores. They're not job hunting. They're not a house hunting. They're not, struggling. They live a different world. Like I said, go to any emergency room. It's like the waiting room at the UN. And it's insane. So, my son broke his foot, and we were waiting for hours and hours because these are people that don't have doctors. He was there for a real emergency.
Yeah.
But we're waiting behind everybody with sniffles until you actually get to triage. And I'm just going to throw something in because I can. My son is 6'2". He's like 220 pounds. He's a big, burly dude. Short hair, he's a man's man. Do you know when we got in there, they asked him if he thought he might be pregnant and needed a pregnancy test?
Oh, Lord, no. No.
And we wondered what our health care costs. I said, he looks at me, and he's, he's almost 30 years old. It's just I had to drive him there because he broke his foot. And I said, son, do it. Just do it. No, Mom, no, seriously, I don't need it. I said, no, I want to take pictures of you doing it. And because it was just absurd.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of our Mr. Waltz, the vice presidential candidate with Kamala. putting tampon dispensers in the boys'
In the
bathrooms.
boys' bathroom,
And
exactly.
where's that? Wisconsin or Minnesota? I can't
Minnesota,
remember.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
I just wondered where they were going to put, where these boys were going to put the tampons. So they're going to put them up their backside or something?
Exactly.
Seriously.
Okay, I did a campaign video. My campaign decided that we weren't going to show it. And I'll have to share it with you because I couldn't keep a straight face. And we were talking about the tampons in the boys' restrooms. And they were shooting tampons because if you stuff the string out and hit it, it's like a party popper. And I'm trying to talk serious, and we've got streamers going by. And then one of them hit me, and I just couldn't hold it anymore. So the campaign, my advisor said, Chris, it wasn't even we decided against it. It was more like, Chris, please don't do that. But I thought it was awesome. We need a hidden camera, the candid camera, and let's put a box of tampons just where little boys can get it. Anywhere little boys from 6 to 12. That's the opportune age where they could do just really some despicable, funny things with it. It would be a great cameo.
And the crazy thing is, boys that age aren't even going to know what the heck a tampon is.
Exactly.
Exactly. But see the difference between the 6-year-old and the 12-year-old. The 12-year-old would dip it in gas and light it on fire before he popped it across the room. Yeah. I know boys.
This is just, it's beyond the pale, some of these things we're hearing about. But, this is the problem, right? When it's government resources, I guess there's no plan that's too absurd or too ridiculous to do, which is,
because
I can't.
They're not government resources. They're our
resources. Exactly. Taxpayers resources. Absolutely.
Yes, this is our money.
Yes.
And I want a refund for every tampon dispenser in the little boy's bathroom.
I will follow you on that one. Yes, definitely.
Well, I tell you what, if you're watching us on public access, we still got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about how Chris's campaign is going, and we're going to talk about some other issues too. We'll be talking about potentially maybe some of Ami Bera's penchant for policing the world. Maybe we'll talk about COVID a little bit, the drug war, censorship. So we'll get into a bunch of those topics if we have time, but you're going to have to go online to catch that. So check that out, and you can find some of our other conversations out there too.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. So back to the show, Chris. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was so I guess you're saying that you think the campaign is pretty close at this point?
I think we're in the margin of error. But, it's not just my campaign's numbers, but we've had some outside organizations contact us, other groups that have contacted the campaign. We've had organizations actually contact the state Republican Party who believe this really is a targeted race. Now, if you go to Ami Bera's website, and it's Get Out the Votes, if you go to his website /GOTV, you will see he says that this is the closest race in the state. Those are his words, not mine. I'm just glad he confirmed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, this is California. It may be that there are no close races. Hopefully that's not true, though. Hopefully you're running.
In California, they may only look so, They may look so.
We have made amazing strides in election integrity because that is a passion of mine. So our sheriff, who, believe it or not, Sacramento County Sheriff, he is a Democrat, but that man has my respect. He is cracking down on crime. He is standing up to the politicians. I don't care what his political party is. I believe this man is doing the right thing for the right reasons. And I talked to someone on his staff. There actually have deputies picking up the ballots from the drop boxes to maintain a chain of custody. That doesn't fix all of the possible problems, but Sheriff Cooper, I'm proud of you. And I'm proud of the job that you are doing.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a staunch Republican, independent, kind of libertarian leaning tiger mom.
Well, I think you gotta give credit where credit is due. I mean, this Cooper guy has been around for a while. I've heard about him. I think I might have voted for him one time just because of the things I've heard about him. I didn't know this latest stuff you just said. I didn't know any of that. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that.
He's not the person that I thought he was. He's so much more. And, I'm just proud of the job that he's doing. And if nothing else, it demonstrates that we have to vote for the person, not the critter they worship.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I agree.
Chris,
Yeah.
one of the things I like to ask, because one of the things we're trying to do on this show is empower people, if they want to get up to make a difference, kind of the way you're trying to do, how they go about it and what kind of resources are available. So you're running as a Republican. Are you having to finance all this yourself, or is the Republican Party helping you out? And if so, what kind of resources does it take to run if you want to run a campaign?
Okay, so I've self-funded a lot, got myself in, but I am fundraising. I can tell you right now, short of a check mark and a flyer that they sent me, I think they got a little thing that they're pushing out, a card. I'm getting no help from the Republican Party. And in fact, I think there's a few that are working against me. No, I don't think it. I know it.
That's what happened to Larry Elder, too, by the way,
Yes,
when he had a
that's right.
chance to go against Gavin Newsom and the Republican Party didn't even help him out.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly.
terrible.
Exactly. Well, it's, I don't exactly do what I'm told. And I guess that's the libertarian in me. It's, you do what's right, not what's expected.
Mm.
Because, these are parties. It's a small group of people that are supposed to be coming together to help cultivate and bring up the best candidates. But ultimately, it's up to the people. But when they've put themselves in a position of power and think that they decide what is best, and it's not, I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican since before I could vote. And there's a whole story behind that. We won't get into it. But it's about where I guess I best identify. It's the platform and how I believe, and that's what it is. I'm not loyal to the people that are currently in charge.
Indeed. So, Christine, so if here we are less than 3 weeks from the elections, and the Republican Party is not giving you very much help. How are you getting your message out?
We are doing it by good old-fashioned door knocking, making phone calls. I'm on the phones every day. I have volunteers that all over the country. We have a group in Alabama, people in Texas, people in New York. It's beautiful what's happening. It's seeing people activated. And I can't take all the credit for that. We're seeing what the current, I guess, group of politicians has done, Republican and Democrat alike. The border right now is the worst it's ever been under Joe Biden and the Harris regime. And we saw that brief, I guess, break that we got with Donald Trump. But I remember going back to as a girl, listening to politicians on both sides of the aisle. We even watched Ronald Reagan give blanket amnesty.
You did, yes.
And that was supposed to be the end of it. That at that point, then things were going to change, and we've slowly watched it get progressively worse. And I'm going to be honest with you, the people that were coming over at that time, these were hardworking people. And, my dad, he was manager for a resort. And I had a choice of working in the kitchen or working with the maids at this resort. And I wasn't going to clean squid. So I worked with the maids. I think I was 13 years old. And these maids did not speak English. But I can attribute my work ethic to those wonderful women who didn't treat me any different. I was cleaning toilets. There was no such thing as gloves or a scrub brush. You got a wash rag and you had to get up underneath the rims. My nails never looked so good. But I was expected to work and there was no special treatment to me. And for these women, they were supporting their families. They did not have time for, some kid to slow them down. And so I was expected to keep up. So my view of the people that came through at that time and the gangbangers and the drugs and the spies and the terrorists and the criminals that are coming over now, those were not the honorable, hardworking people that were looking for a better life. I'm not getting sold on that with this crew that's coming through.
Well, and this is the problem. I mean, this is where, to me, the libertarian argument makes so much sense on so many of these things. It's about the incentives. I mean, you've seen what's happened in New York. I mean, Mayor Eric Adams is saying, look, this issue is going to destroy New York City. He said that,
Mhm.
in front of
Yeah.
a city council. And he's not lying. I mean, you're watching that city fall apart, with
And he's
all
not exactly on our side,
yeah.
No, he's not.
Yeah. But I mean, it's
Not
not
He used to
about
be.
anymore. Not anymore.
He used to be,
yeah.
but no
Yeah.
longer.
But I mean, that's the point. I mean, if people are just coming, like you're saying, somebody just wants to come and do a hard day's work, and it's a voluntary exchange type of thing. I think most people are sort of okay with that. But what's happening now is, especially in these Democrat, socialist run places, is they've said, hey, it's free stuff. And, when you start saying that, when you start, offering all kinds of incentives, I mean, there's a reason why a lot of people are heading to New York City. It's because they're offering free housing. They're handing out cards with money on them for food and other things like that. And it's just, so the people are headed there, and
But
it's
it's not free. This
It's
is
exactly
not free. We
our
pay for
money.
it.
yeah,
These
We
are
pay for it
our
exactly.
tax dollars. And
yeah,
the people that are giving it away are nothing short of thieves.
yeah, yeah.
And Jason, I know you and I have a little difference on this, but I have to say this, okay?
Go ahead.
There is no way you can have these open borders. No way, because politicians will always find ways to incentivize these people to come here and
Yeah.
stay here. And usually when they're incentivizing people, they're going to incentivize them with our tax dollars. There is no way this can work. It
Well,
can
and
never
this
work.
is what Milton Friedman said. He said, "Look, you can have I mean, you shouldn't have a welfare state, but if you do have a welfare state, you can't have open borders." I mean, that's what he said. I mean, so he says
The
you sort of have
world
your welfare
misses
state
him.
or open borders, but you can't have both, right? And that's what he was saying, and it's bearing out. I mean, Milton Friedman has been right on a lot of things, and he's proving
Yeah.
right on this issue again too. Um,
Agreed.
yeah.
Agreed. I agree with that. So I love my country. I love the melting pot. I'm a Heinz 57, Italian, Irish, Jewish heritage, French, German, Scottish, and
The United Nations.
the United Nations. But think about that wonderful blending of culture that made me the unique individual that I am. And all of us here have that shared history that we are unique. And it is the pioneering spirit that brought those people here. Now I think about my ancestors, from the Italian ones that got in all kinds of trouble to the noble ones who fought in the American Revolution. They came here without being able to speak the language, usually broke as could be, with no safety net, yet they risked their lives to be here for the hope of who I might be. Not even knowing who I am, but they wanted a better future for not just themselves, but for their children and their grandchildren. And what an amazing legacy that we all are, and that our country is. You know, think about it. On St. Patrick's Day, we're all Irish. You know, how cool is that?
Yep. Yeah. No, it's wonderful that we can, have these shared things. Unfortunately, it feels like with the Democrats, they're constantly trying to divide us on these things. And
Yes.
instead of everybody having fun sharing each other's culture, it's like, accusations of cultural appropriation and just,
Well, that's about control, because you have to put us into check boxes. You know, when you start looking at just filling out a piece of paper, it wants to know what's your ethnic background. Are you white, but white, not Hispanic white?
Yeah.
You know, black, Asian, Pacific Asian, and they get you into that box. Then are you a man, a woman, or other?
Yeah.
You know, the alphabet people, you know,
Yes.
and you start going through and you look at all the little boxes that they want to divide us into and separate us.
Yeah.
United, that is how we are strong. You know, they're deliberately destroying our military by dividing us into small groups and doing things to separate us. Together, we're amazing.
Yeah.
We are the strongest nation, the strongest people, and it is our differences that make us so powerful. And you know, I don't mean to sound mushy, but amazing that God gave us all this opportunity. All these people just threw us all together and found out that, you know, there's going to be some fighting and some bickering, but when it really counts, we come together.
Come together.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny. You know, the Martin Luther King said when he made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, that he said that he hoped that one day his 4 little children can grow up in a nation where they are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And I have known about that since I was a child. That statement since I was a child, and I always hold to that it's the individual that's important. And you're so right, Christine. They're always trying to put us into some little box. You know, are you black? Are you this? Are you white? Are you the other? And they always have some scheme that they think is going to work out. But the whole thing that they are doing is nothing but Jim Crow all over.
Yes.
That's what they're doing. It's Jim Crow again. And they expect us to go along with this damn nonsense. And this is a big failure, I think, of a lot of conservatives. We don't fight back against this nonsense enough. We really don't.
I do.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I really am.
Yeah. Well, that's
I got enough fight in me for a few. Yeah, I'd like my own battalion.
Yeah. But you know something, Christine, you know where the rubber does really meet the road. Most whites, and I do not mean this in any offensive way, please. Most whites, the first time somebody says you are a racist, the argument stops. They are afraid to be called a racist. Even when they are speaking truths that we need to hear, the minute somebody say, oh, there's a racist, or like right now, you know, you're speaking some things, and you know, I'm a black man, and I can say, no, Christine, that's some very racist, and all of a sudden the conversation ends. This is the problem we have, that we cannot be afraid to be called racist, or in my case, be called Uncle Tom. We cannot be afraid of these things. We have to speak truth. We always have to.
Leon, you look at the experiment that we just lived through, that we're about to go through again, which was COVID.
Yes.
They convinced a population, a huge percentage of our population, to be afraid to breathe.
Yes.
We look back in history and you wonder, you know, my ancestors, why did the Jews get into the cattle cars? Why did they willingly go to their death? So the modern interpretation of that is, why were people willing to put masks and double mask and triple mask their children and isolate them? Why did we let our sick and elderly lay in hospital beds and die alone? Those are questions that only history will ultimately answer. So I would say, well, they convinced a lot of people to be afraid to breathe, and they convinced a lot of people to get into those cattle cars. There were several that fought back, and they were relocated to Israel. There were several people who fought back. We filed lawsuits. We refused to be masked. We refused the vaccinations. We refused to be the cattle. And their experiment failed.
Well, Christine, there's something I want to jump in now because you brought us to the COVID issue, and I think maybe this is a good demarker, maybe of a difference between you and Ami Bera. I mean, there's probably a whole bunch of differences between you and Ami Bera, but I think this one is critical because, like you said, we have lived through something that is sort of a once in a century, maybe certainly once in a generation type of thing
Yeah.
at best, where the government has trampled all of our rights. And so Ami Bera was much more on the side of the government in that sense, of central planners and thinking that we needed these lockdowns and government should be telling us what to do. And in fact, I have a couple of video clips of him at the moment because he was being interviewed at a conference, about what the proper response was to this. And so I'd like to play those now because I think this gives a really good juxtaposition between the two of you. So, James, can you play KOL number 2?
Yeah, the second week of March, people started to put in social distancing measures in Seattle and California. Fairly early on, Governor Newsom here in California, as the first state, went to voluntary stay-at-home orders to fairly quickly to mandatory stay-at-home orders. New York was a little bit after us. Washington State was around the same time as California. Unfortunately, you've seen other states like Florida and Texas that have still not issued mandatory stay-at-home orders statewide, and we've been pushing the administration at the federal level to issue that order as opposed to leaving to 50 states.
So there you see, he's literally saying, hey, look, we need to force all these states into lockdown. So we can't even have the experiment happen in different states of what might work best, and people trying to decide for themselves. We have another clip, too, of him talking about this lockdown issue with masks as well. So, James, can you play KOL number 3?
I was wondering if in NDC, anybody is yet thinking about how we're going to unroll shelter in place. I'm sure many people wonder about this, and especially if it's going to be coordinated or if it'll be a county by county basis as it was stood up.
I think in an ideal setting, you would have the federal government coordinating with the states and the local public health authorities. You'd also have the science guiding this. We have to know what level of immunity exists in a community, and we can start then releasing those folks that have some level of immunity back into the community, either to care for folks that are still ill or to get the economy going again. You'll hear this debate about whether we use face masks on the general public to also reduce spread. We're in the process of getting the CDC to change their guidelines. We do think once we've taken care of our healthcare workers and first responders, then it probably does make sense to make sure the general public, for a limited time, does use that protective face mask.
So you can see here, Ami Bera was all in on, hey, look, whatever the science tells us, we've got to do whatever Mr. Science tells us. Mm-hmm. And of course, who was the science? It was just a bureaucrat named Fauci.
Well, exactly.
Mr. Science should go to jail.
Yeah.
Well, and Ami Bera, I think it was 4 times, because at that point, Nancy Pelosi did the whole proxy voting in Congress where you didn't have to be there. You could give your vote to someone else. So it was actually Memorial Day weekend, 2020. Ami Bera gave his vote to another member of Congress and said it was for health problems. But then We've got photographs of him. He showed up at a Memorial Day event, Citrus Heights Sylvan Cemetery. He's out there in a Tommy Bahama shirt and topsiders, no mask. We got a bunch of some of those were a couple of World War II vets. He wasn't worried about infecting them. And then, we picked up another picture of him at a George Floyd rally, and he's taken a knee to defund the police. At that time, how disrespectful. He's wearing a flag printed mask, and he's down on one knee. So that's one problem. The next problem with Mr. Barra is he is well aware that the masks, the blue masks, those cloth masks, all of that, those only work with particles. They do not protect you from viruses. And those crazy masks they make you wear, it's only good if you spit when you talk or you're sneezing, because if you put on the bottom, it doesn't stop viruses.
Yeah.
So this whole thing was a sham about, can we trick you into being afraid to breathe? And I can tell you right now, I do have the photographs, because I was there and I didn't have a mask on, and neither did Ami Berra.
Yeah. And this is the crazy thing too. I mean, we like to show this one meme. Unfortunately, I didn't have it for this show because I wasn't thinking we were going to go there. But some of the things they told us to do on COVID were absolutely insane. Like at the airport, forcing everybody to stand 6 feet apart and wear masks. And then once you got on the airplane, you were sitting shoulder to shoulder with the person. I mean, this is just insanity, right? Just follow the rules, don't question, and follow the arrows through the grocery store, and that will keep you safe.
That is the experiment. How far can we push people? Can we get them to willingly get into the cattle cars? And luckily, a lot of us stood up. In fact, I sued Governor Newsom over his violation of our First and 14th Amendment rights. And that went all the way up to the point where he finally lifted the emergency order.
That was after he came from the French Laundry.
Yes. And like I said, Barra showing up in Memorial Day weekend 2020 said he couldn't be there for health reasons, but he's running around in topsiders and a Tommy Bahama. Or going down to protest the police. I know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
He is one of those people that he's just an elitist.
Yeah. And certainly we saw this too, which was one of the most ridiculous things where, and we showed this on another show. I wish I'd brought this clip too, but essentially where many people in even the medical community and science type minded people, people wearing white lab coats, were telling us that, you had to shelter in place. You had to take the vaccine. You had to wear a mask. But if you're going out to protest for George Floyd, that's okay then. You can be next to everybody.
Exactly.
Like somehow that, they can make these judgments that, they're the planners. They can decide what, the science
they denied my permit to campaign. I was trying to hold a campaign rally at the Capitol is what I was trying to do. And it eventually turned into all those protests that we had in downtown Sacramento over the lockdowns. And it wasn't about trying to keep people social distance. It was about control. When you start locking people out of church, telling them they cannot worship, but you can go to a dispensary or a strip club, then something's not right.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, though, this was the whole thing. Government had ordained themselves as the arbiter of what was essential and what was not. So they were picking that these businesses can stay open, that business must close. All the big stores like Walmart and Walgreens and all of them, they stayed open, but the little mom and pop type down the street, they closed down. Some of them are gone. We had a nice restaurant not too far from here, a restaurant. They're gone. They're out of business. They're never coming back. We have very nice restaurants. We used to go there all the time.
And then what they
Well,
tried to
Leon,
sell
they
us,
weren't essential.
This is the problem.
they weren't essential. But then what they did was they tried to sell us under a different word, but they tried to sell us reparations.
Yeah.
If your business was harmed, if your company was harmed, you were locked out, we have money to pay you off.
Mhm.
As if money can replace the business, if money can replace your family farm, your home, your family structure, bring someone back who died from their ridiculous policies. They tried to buy us off.
Yeah. Even worse, in places like
Exactly.
San Francisco, they had you check race boxes when they paid you off as well. So you only got paid off if you met the criteria as well.
Yes, right.
So that's
Exactly.
pretty horrible
But
stuff.
when you start thinking about how they tried to buy it off, and then you put the term reparation in there, a light goes on. It's a buy off. You know what you did was wrong, and you're trying to buy our silence.
Yeah. Well, another thing with respect to silence as well, I wanted to say is let's look at maybe Ami Bera's thoughts on uh, censorship, I guess. And so, James, maybe you could bring up the visual here. So one of the things we found out during COVID is that the government was trying to shut people down. You know, if you had different views on COVID than whatever the consensus, of the of the WHO, the World Health Organization, or somebody else, then suddenly you weren't allowed to speak, and it didn't matter whether you were a doctor or others. And so Zuckerberg even came out eventually and said, "Hey, yeah, look, the government was there." Pressuring us to shut people down online. And of course, we know from Elon Musk buying Twitter and now turning that into X that there were also all kinds of files back and forth where the government was trying to pressure them as well to shut people down, which is a huge violation of the First Amendment. But I think it's
Well,
instructive
you
to
know why
find out.
Zuckerberg was the first one to come out?
Yeah.
Because the first rat doesn't go to prison.
I suppose so. Yeah. But one of the things, too, I thought it was informative here is what did Ami Bera think about this kind of stuff? And so we can see here in this article that he had on the Hill that was, I think, co-authored between him and somebody named Seth Berkley. And they had this article on when it comes to vaccine misinformation, social media needs to be proactive in finding solutions. And so they talk throughout the article about, hey, look, we know what vaccine science is, and we just can't have these vaccine deniers running around and having other information out there that stops people from getting their vaccines. In fact, at the end, he says, this is not about taking sides in a debate or a topic in which reasonable minds can disagree. This is not about one point of view versus another. It is about fact versus myth. The safety and efficacy of vaccines is scientifically settled fact. So now, once again,
Except
this
it's
was
not
a
a
vaccine.
vaccine.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
and
never a vaccine.
yes, this treatment that they made suddenly broke all of the paradigms on how much time it took to develop a safe vaccine, which was about, somewhere between 6 and 10 years. And they did it in a period of about 6 months. And then they told you weren't allowed to question that. So before the FDA is literally telling you that, no, you don't get a choice to what you want to put in your own body or to try medications on your own. We're not going to allow you to do that. But, oh, hey, by the way, we want to force this thing on you, and you also don't get to ask questions about that, or you're just a science denier.
Well,
So,
yeah, that's a clot shot, and was treating us, as far as I'm concerned, he is as guilty as the monsters with the Tuskegee experiments.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
If I
Well,
am wrong, correct me. I see him as nothing more than that.
I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily maliciousness, but the problem is these people who are on the
When
central
you
planning
when
socialist.
you lie, you
No,
willingly lie. He knew it did not meet the criteria of a vaccine, that it was untested. He is responsible
yeah.
for
Well,
his own actions.
Yeah. What gets me about a lot of these people is they think that they have knowledge that's better than the rest of the public, and therefore they think they can make decisions for us. And that's what's scary when these people get into these positions. And a big scare comes up. They use that to be able to grasp power. And so I'm hoping, it sounds like you definitely want to push back against that kind of power grab, if
I
you're
do.
able to make it to Congress. So.
Doctors have to have malpractice insurance. Just like lawyers, even me, I have errors and omissions insurance as a real estate agent, because the mistakes that I make, that doctors and lawyers and other people who are required to have this type of insurance, is because the mistakes that you can make can ruin people's lives, if not cost them their lives. Now, if we were to say that politicians had to have this same kind of insurance in case they make mistakes, boy, you would see a whole different electorate. People who are elected in. Yeah, especially if the insurance companies are making the decisions on what these clowns say and do.
Yeah, I can't remember what they call that, but it had to do with the having not having to have liability if you're executing public business, for these decisions.
Qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity.
Qualified
That's it.
immunity.
Yeah,
Yes.
and,
In
and
other words, free for all.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that is where I think we could get government much smaller if the people who were running things understood that they didn't have qualified community. You can bet they'd want this to be a much more simpler system so that they could understand exactly what kind of risk they're taking on when they make these decisions. But the system is so big and cumbersome that a lot of them, I think that they don't even necessarily always know if they're violating your rights or not. They just do it because they think they can.
Well,
So,
and especially with Barra under Nancy Pelosi, he wasn't even there to vote. Did you know during that giant omnibus bill that they did? Was it 2020? I mean that big behemoth. That Barra wasn't even there. He sent a letter. I think it was Byers from Alabama who had Barra's proxy to vote on that. In fact, 220 members of Congress were not there. It was done by a handful of people.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that. And even Marjorie Taylor Greene was one of the people that gave a proxy to somebody else.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow. Okay.
I think Byers had eight proxies. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had a bunch of proxies. They were voting for other people.
Wow.
Well, they were out vacationing, doing whatever. This is insane. Yeah, that's one of the things that I was really happy about with McCarthy. Not that he was my favorite person and voted the way I wanted him to, but at least he ended the proxies as it should have been done in Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got that done, and I was happy to see that.
Well, I know we've gone over an hour here, so I didn't want to take up too much more of your time, but we did have, if you have time for a couple of lightning questions real quick before we hit our knucklehead noise patrol. Okay.
And let everybody know,
thoughts?
hold on, let them know, I do not have these questions in advance. You're getting a raw answer.
Damn, you're not Kamala Harris. Eh? Okay, we're glad to know.
No, I don't have a script or anything.
Well, this is a very important one for, I guess, liberty-minded people. But what are your thoughts on policing the world? Because we know Ami Bera is all in on this. He is for sending money to Ukraine. He is for sending money to, the Middle East. He is for sending money to Asia. To our role in Asia as far as policing that area there. What would you be voting for if you went to Congress? Would you be for trying a little more on the Ron Paul side of things, or a little more on, I guess, the Joe Biden policing the world?
No. I'm more of a Ron Paul there. We have to take care of ourselves and our people first. Now that does not mean that we can't help other people, but if you've ever had not much to eat, you feed your family first. And then when you have things left over, a little extra, you're in better case, then you share with other people who do not have as much. And that doesn't mean we can't tighten our belt and help other people. But Americans cannot be expected to take care of the world. That's not our job.
And this is a crazy thing, and this is, one of the reasons I like the libertarian position on this. But there's nothing that's keeping us as individuals from sending our money over there if that's what we want to do as an individual. But the idea that that there's some people
That we're
that
being
won't
forced
force it
to.
all. Yes, exactly. So that's especially when we have these problems here, like the $750 is all they're handing hurricane victims, but they're literally trying to prop up the economy in Kyiv, and it's just it's insane, the
It is
priority of
insane.
these things.
Well, and it's intended that way. It's the more we get used to it, you tell the same lie over and over again, and eventually it becomes truth. Except for people like us who get in the way, who speak louder, and the more lies they tell, the louder we get. And we don't want to be the crazy person saying, don't drink the water. But, or don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, but we have to stand up. And you know what? Patriotism and doing what's right, it's infectious. And as people wake up, as they wake up and they look around and they see their own lives, or they see a reflection of strength, something that is in them, and that they understand that you're not alone, we see more people come to the rally call of truth.
Well,
the question that always comes out here is that, to me at least, is yes, I understand the concept of America first, right? You would have to take care of your home before you can take care of your neighbor and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely, I totally agree. But it still leaves the open question of, what do we do about evil in the world? And some of that evil threaten some of our interests. What do we do about that?
Well, right now, what we are doing is funding the evil.
Yeah.
Under the Biden-Harris and with the cooperation of Ami Bera, we have a nuclear Iran. We're on the brink of World War III. We have given up our energy independence and our national reserves in order for Putin to be able to put in his own pipeline, to see more energy independence coming out of the rest of the world. Well, we're trapped not being able to use our own resources.
Yeah.
This is insanity.
Yeah, it feels like oftentimes we're shooting into a crowd and hoping to hit the bad guy, and who knows who we're hitting. Maybe they're all bad
It's trying to
guys.
put out a fire with a colander. You got
Yeah.
a strainer and you're trying to put out the fire.
Yeah.
And where Ami Bera will be soft spoken, and he'll seem reasonable, but it's not what he says and what he appears. It is his voting record, and he cannot hide his voting record. He voted against the Laken Riley Act. He voted against the SAVE Act. He voted against the Protect Women and Girls in Sports Act. We can go on and on. He voted to approve illegal aliens to vote in Washington, D.C., and then voted against having ID here in California. You can't buy spray paint or cough medicine without an ID, but you can vote to put him back in office?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Probably hoping that a lot of people who shouldn't be voting maybe are out there voting as well. Another question I had, though, this is a really serious one for any liberty-minded person, is about the debt. And James, maybe you can bring up the visual on this. If you talk about an existential hockey stick, which we hear the left talk about all the time, an existential hockey stick, you couldn't see one that mirrors that more than our debt. And this is from our treasury.gov, and it shows in 1924 this was the size of our debt down here. Now it's gone up just like a hockey stick to over 35 trillion and counting. And you can see what that means in terms of our productivity. This is debt to GDP. You can see how it was around 100% at World War II. So those are the kind of emergency situations where you might have the government spend more to fight that evil Leon was talking about, maybe.
Right.
But here we are now, and what do we have to show for it? And our CBO says we're heading off into the stratosphere here. So and of course there's the debt clock here, and gosh, I don't know what that cover was. Oh well, I don't know what that thing was. I thought I had the debt clock there, but anyways, it shows that every citizen owes in the neighborhood of, like, $150,000, $200,000 in debt. If we were actually going to force everybody to pay their part of the national debt. So what would you do? Well, what's your idea when you get to Congress? How are you going to try to at least make sure that this thing doesn't get any worse? If not
Okay,
trying to
so
solve it?
one thing, and I'm going to get pushback on it, is China created a lot of this recent debt, putting it, the COVID lockdowns and how Biden handled it, even how Trump started out. He had bad information, and you can give him a little bit of a break, but he kind of put us here. He learned his lesson, and I'm willing to give him another chance. But the Biden-Harris administration, with the help of Ami Bera, really created this, and we're submissive to China. So I'm all for holding China accountable, and I think they owe us restitution on the debt that was created by the virus that they created, and how it was handled. I believe China owes America a lot of money, and that we need to erase some of that debt as restitution.
Yeah.
Next thing
how or where would we get this adjudicated?
well, that's going to be Congress. We control the purse. That will be legislation, and it will be an ugly fight, but it's one I'm willing to take up. Next thing we have to do is get rid of these ridiculous omnibus bills that are nothing but pork, that return. And I guess in Ami Bera's own verbiage, he says he's recovered tax dollars for pork projects around Sacramento. We have to stop with these omnibus bills, and each piece of legislation has to stand on its own. And what's brilliant about that is it makes a bigger voting record to hold politicians accountable. And we cannot keep doing these continuing resolutions. It's a credit card. We've got to cut the credit card, and that means making some hard decisions. Some decisions that could cost me and other people possibly our re-election, because we're willing to say no. You got a kid that wants to eat dessert first and not get the healthy things that they need. Well, guess what? You have to be a parent, not a friend.
Yeah. Well, this is part of the reason I think why they have these omnibus bills, is because it's an issue of practicality. If they wanted to vote on all of the things that are covered in those bills, they would never be done voting. And I think that's why we need to hold them to the fire on this and force them to choose what's important enough to vote over. Because the problem is that they're slamming all kinds of stuff into these bills that somebody like a Nancy Pelosi will say, hey, you can read about what's in it after we pass it.
Exactly. Well, and the Supreme Court just did something amazing when they took away the ability, or limited the ability, of the different agencies to set policies and then enforce their own policies, right? The IRS, we set up these codes, and then we set up the enforcement for our own codes, but it was never voted on. Elected officials didn't do it. And this was by design, with these politicians, to surrender the power of Congress, the entire body of Congress, over to 3-letter agencies. And as we start, the Supreme Court laid the groundwork for this, is to start eliminating some of these 3-letter agencies and return power to the states. The Constitution is very clear what the power of the federal government is and what the role is. It is going to be the people who, like me, who are strong enough and not worried about re-election, because I'm going there to serve, not to lead.
Okay.
To make the hard decisions that a career politician won't make.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's something that they're not there for. They're there to get richer.
Yeah. Like I said, just like my kids, you got enough friends.
Yeah.
You need a parent.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting close to the end of the show here, and I was wondering, I did have that video I wanted to show of yours. I also did kind of want to. How much time do you have? Do you have like 5-10 minutes?
We can go all night.
Oh, okay. Then let's do our. Okay, so I guess what I'll do. Let's show our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. We'll do that, and we can we get a good laugh out of that. And then I guess I'd like to end on the video that we have of Christine Bish, and that will really give you a good sense of who Christine is and one of the other reasons why she's really doing what she's doing here and stuff. Yes. So let's jump to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol that we like to do when we want to talk about something kind of funny that happened recently. Some crazy person might have said in the media or something, and in this particular case, it's Martha Radish of what is it? This week on ABC. So she was interviewing J.D. Vance, the vice presidential contender, and it got to talking about some of the issues of immigration that we've been talking about. And one of those issues was an issue with gosh, can't get this stupid ad off of here. But one of the issues had to do with these migrant gangs that had come in this border flood under Biden, and that they had actually taken over a apartment complex in Colorado. In fact, there may have even been more than one.
It was several.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's what was being covered, and it's really instructive to see how this interview went, because it shows a lot of problems that we have with the media. So, James, can we play KNP number 1? This shows
the Republican mayor of the city said flatly the city and state have not been taken over or invaded or occupied by migrant gangs. So, do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened. Martha, I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
So there you have it, Martha Radish.
You should have played J.D. Vance.
Well, we are going to play that, Leo.
Sorry.
So we have a second piece. I just couldn't play the whole thing because it'd be too long at once. But there you have her saying that, hey, look, this is why are you worried about it? This is just a few complexes. What's the problem? So J.D. Vance's response is classic. So maybe James, can you play KNP number 2?
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting, because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said, rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again. And unfortunately, when you let people in by the millions, most of whom are unvetted, most of whom you don't know who they really are, you're going to have problems like this. Kamala Harris, 94 executive orders that undid Donald Trump's successful border policies. We knew this stuff would happen. They bragged about opening the border, and now we have the consequences, and we're living with it. We can do so much better, but frankly, we're not going to do better, Martha, unless Donald Trump calls this stuff out. I'm glad that he did.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said. I want to move on to
just a few apartment complexes, no big deal.
A few apartment complexes.
Just a few apartment complexes, but
Yeah,
I
you
think
just got to break a couple of eggs to make an omelet.
Well, I think this is so instructive because not only does it talk about the immigration problem that we've been talking about, but it also talks about the media problem as well. I mean, there used to be a day when journalists would have salivated for a story like that to go and dig on it and find out, hey, the government's telling me it's not a problem. We're dealing with it. And they would have been all over it. Instead, she's just like calls him, oh, yeah, the police chief told me there's not a problem. So what are you talking about here? That's journalism today? I mean, I can't even believe it. It's just absolutely insane. But
anyways, and we have a fix for that. And that's going to be a disclosure, a disclaimer that says that you are a journalist and it's unbiased, or if you are there for entertainment and opinion.
Just
saying.
Yeah,
no, we have the same sign or same picture behind each of us.
But
personally, well, go ahead, Leon.
The thing is here that the media have picked a side in this quote unquote fight between the Republican Donald Trump and the Democrat Kamala Harris. They have picked a side, and their side is Kamala Harris and her disastrous policies at the border, because they don't want to say that, well, they are letting all these people in the country so that down the road, the Democrats are going to have votes. They don't want to say that. Oh, we're only doing this out of compassion. These people may be persecuted, so we have to make sure they're safe and all that kind of nonsense. So anytime you hear anything bad come out about these migrants, murder, rape, they're taking over buildings and all that kind of stuff, they always try to downplay it and minimize it. And I love what J.D. Vance said. They took over buildings in America, not in wherever they came from, in America. And nobody seemed to be concerned about this.
They picked a side, and the side that they picked was not citizens. It is literally that simple. You picked a side, and that makes you a traitor, and you should be treated as such.
Yeah, well, the way I see it too.
I call it like I see it.
Yeah.
I can tell.
The way I see somebody like Martha Radish, though, is that, I don't care if she has an opinion and it's different, and she, if she even wants to throw that in there. But the problem is these are the journalists who are telling us that if we say something that doesn't agree with us, that it's misinformation or disinformation. And these are the same people who want the government to silence people like us that are questioning them. That's the crazy thing here. I mean, I just,
what gets me is Karen's getting paid a lot of money to do that.
Yeah.
Yes. But the thing is, though, Jason, if you go and you turn on Fox News right now, okay, this is during their prime time, you're going to see a bunch of people there talking. They are opinion people, and they make that very clear. They are opinion people, they have opinions and that kind of stuff and things like that. But we have people like Martha Raddatz who masquerade as journalists.
Yes.
They masquerade as journalists, and all they give us is a bunch of their own left-wing opinions.
Yeah. And it's true, she's masquerading, but the question is, who would police that, right? I mean, I really don't want the government coming in and policing, who's a journalist and who's not. So I'd rather just have the public have the common sense to know that, hey, this woman is crazy. She's got an opinion, and you probably better buyer beware if you're listening to anything she says. This Martha Radish. But it's the thing is that the irony is that she wants to use the government power to censor people, and she's trying to fact check there J.D. Vance at the same time saying, what you're saying isn't true. So I need to be the one to jump in and fact check you, which is what we saw also during the debates as well. yeah,
Well,
this is.
and that's where things like this are funny. Imagine if the three of us got together and we, kind of like the Hodge twins, and we just play her stuff, and then we stop and make fun of her and point out all the just ridiculous things, and and ask her if she's having a hot flash or what's going on today, girl.
Yeah.
I don't want her to have her finger on a button. Yeah, not when you got hormone things going on.
Well, you certainly know she's got some TDS going on anyway.
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
That's aggravated by the hot flash.
Oh, yes.
Well,
I'm 58 years old, so I know what she's got going on. But come on, girlfriend, you gotta get some Midol, something.
yeah.
Get her one of those hot flashes. Get her one of those hot flashes.
Yeah. Keep the hot flashes. I was thinking, keep the hot flashes out of the news flashes. But I think though we've gone pretty long here, and so now I kind of want to wrap up with Christine Bish. She has a campaign video that kind of shows, and we edited it down a little bit because it was about 4 minutes. We brought it down to about 3, but it really gives you a sense of also, in her words, why she's running. And we certainly heard her talk a lot about it here, but I think there's also a very personal aspect that she talks about it in there. And so I think it's worth playing that as well. So James, can you play clip KOL1?
This is new tonight at 6. 2 people died in Sacramento County, and it appears they are the latest victims of fentanyl. The number of fentanyl-related deaths have increased exponentially over the last 10 years, and they have more than tripled since 2019.
Last year, 5,700 people died of fentanyl poisoning. It's a synthetic opioid that is similar to morphine, but about 100 times more potent.
The most recent numbers from the California Department of Health show Sacramento County alone reported 119 deaths in 2021.
Clean and sober is one of the biggest damn mistakes this country's ever made. We all need to self-medicate periodically.
Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years. Yeah. Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States, and it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. Where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. It's not my concern. It's not my concern. It's not my concern.
May 13th, 2022. That was the day my world came crashing down. My daughter, Kara, died from her fentanyl addiction. She was prescribed painkillers from a previous injury and taking them for almost a year. After the hospital cut her off, she started purchasing them through a dealer. While she thought she was buying Percocet, she was actually buying fentanyl. And despite countless times to get clean, fentanyl was too easy to get, and she was too easy a customer. If you know anything about addiction, you know how quickly someone can relapse, especially when dealers can effortlessly buy, transport, and sell drugs to children with little consequences. My name is Christine Bish. I'm a mom, a small business owner, and I'm a Republican running for California's 6th Congressional District. We've seen the videos of men crossing our nation's border with the latest iPhone and brand new backpacks. I know what's in those backpacks. It's the poison that killed my daughter. Joe Biden won't even acknowledge his own son's addiction. I'm sick of politicians who don't care about you and me, who don't care about my daughter and the thousands of other families that have suffered at the hands of Democrats pushing a socialist agenda.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
The goal here is compliance.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
Are you considering the consequences of who you elect to represent you? Because I do. I've dealt with unfair taxes, rising inflation, high crime, and the growing homelessness crisis. It's time to restore Second Amendment freedoms, dissolve sanctuary cities, and end the catch and release in our justice system. Sacramento, I'm ready to fight for you, for our families, for Kara. I'm Christine Bish, and I'm running for California's 6th Congressional District to give you the representation you deserve.
So there you go. And you can find that whole video on her website as well. And that is at, again, at bishforcongress.com. So Jane, maybe you could bring up that website. And I didn't know if you wanted to say anything more about that, but certainly, I mean, this sounds like, some of these policies of the way government has been mismanaged have certainly hit you personally very hard too. And I would have liked to have shown this at the beginning of the show, by the way, but because of public access rules, we had to save it for the end.
No,
So.
it's fine. I really struggled making that video, and I struggle seeing it. I understand my daughter died because of the choices that she made. She made the choice to order those drugs, to take those drugs, and it took her life. I understand that. But the politicians made it easy for the drugs to be here, made them very accessible, and made them cheap. There is accountability. Now, Kara paid the ultimate price, and so did her children, because I'm in the process of adopting my grandson because of the choices she made. But they also made it easy for her to do it. Now, where Kara, she has to not accept them. She's not here anymore. I have to accept that she made the choices she made. But there are so many other people who didn't choose this. Children, who first responders who are around it. Not our population. This is being forced on us. And it's being forced on us by the politicians who will use excuses. Ami Bera used the excuse for the open border that it was for the children, that the unaccompanied minors were coming across the border and we had to help them. Now, when it comes to children, Americans, we are the kindest, most generous, loving people on this planet. And how can you not want to help a child? But the truth is that coyotes and government sent those children here as a distraction to distract our border agents while they traffic drugs at other parts of the border. And now we know that more than 320,000 of those children are missing. And we don't know where they are, but we know they've gone into sex trades. These are slaves for the ones that are still alive. And politicians like Ami Bera have to accept the responsibility of their actions. He went down to protest the Remain in Mexico policy, so this would happen. And he may not have considered the consequences, but ignorance is not a defense.
Yeah. Well, it certainly feels like anything that the government manages, whether it's a drug war, a border, or whatever, boy, they seem to do a terrible job no matter what.
Well, that's because they profit from it. Somebody profits from this.
Yeah.
And that's where I come in, because I am an investigator. I'm not doing this job. It's not to get rich, not to be away from my family, to leave my home, to leave my husband, my grandchildren that I love desperately. It's because I want them to have a life, to have freedom, to be able to grow up unafraid of their government.
Yes. Yes.
That is the goal. That is my mission. And that is the legacy, if anything, because Kara's death had no honor.
Mm.
And, it changed from when I originally got into this because of my cancer. Well, I beat that. Now my legacy is to see my grandchildren have a version of the world that I grew up in.
Mm. Christine, this issue of losing a child, I'm sure it's a very terrible one. I have a sibling who have also lost a child. But I just want to say that I'm really sorry to hear about your daughter. Please accept my condolences. I'm really sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's you know, and you can certainly see why this race and doing things to try and make a difference means so much to you. So, certainly, we, you know, certainly behind, I guess, your motivation for doing all this.
Indeed.
She was
Yeah.
beautiful. She made mistakes. She was flawed. We're all flawed, but it shouldn't have cost her her life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so Christine, I guess is this one question I want to ask you too, I guess, is once this campaign is over, and if it happens that you don't wind up winning, does the march go on? Are you planning to?
Absolutely. I will not stop. I am a juggernaut.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every time, it's I'm in sales as well. No just means try harder.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well,
Fair enough.
and I think this all comes right back to me to what Dwight Eisenhower had said at the beginning of our thing, and that this should be the role of politics, right? I mean, people who really want to go and try to defend their neighbors' rights, as
Yeah.
free people, and that seems to be what your motivation here is. So certainly, we're hoping all the best for you in your campaign, because
Thank you.
right now things are certainly we've seen much better days in California. They were long ago.
Yes, yes, yes.
We've become so desperate. And now what we're seeing is the desperate call for freedom. And that was the birth of our nation, was that desperate call for freedom and that personal loss and sacrifice. I guess it's part of being an American. We rise from the ashes.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
how I see it.
Well,
no, I agree. I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's kind of a big part of why we're doing what we're doing on this show, is because we want people like you to come and tell your stories. We want people like you to try to make a difference and stand up, because right now what's happening is there's a lot of terrible things are happening to our kids and other things, because we've sort of divorced ourselves from the way our country is managed, and just I guess we're just accepted what it is that's coming down from the top. And I think it's at a time where we need to stand up and we need to try and make a difference, and we need to and everybody needs to be involved in that fight. It's something that if you want to protect your liberty and your children's liberty and that legacy, we all need to be involved in the fight. So thanks so much, Christine, for everything you're doing. And again, I want to point people to your website again at bishforcongress.com. And again, if you're out here and you're watching this, Christine's doing something. We've been interviewing people every week who are doing stuff to try and make a difference. So think about what can you do to try and make a difference as well, because that's the only way we're going to do
they
it.
can vote. Your vote matters. In the last election that we had, a friend of mine lost her election by less than 30 votes. Your vote does matter. If nothing else, if you're in this district, it matters to me.
Yeah. And to be honest too, Ami Bera's first election that he won, and there was some issues with some campaign finance issues with that. And
his dad went to jail. Yeah, threw his dad under the bus.
And he wound up with 9,000 votes was the margin. So, I mean, even that is not a huge amount of votes. So, it's all these votes matter. So definitely, vote, but also, be thinking about what you can do too, just, on your own to make the world a little bit better for liberty.
Makes a difference to me.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Christine, and thank you out there for watching us. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.